And welcome, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the Vida television network. Happy you've tuned in this evening. A rather serious program tonight. Not only are we going to be dealing with those of you who may have an investment in illegal or legal immigration to this country, but also your investments, more specifically your money, and the tax reform bill that has been put forward by the Senate and the tax reform bill that has been put forward by the GOP-controlled House. All of that is coming up on the program, so make sure you stay tuned. Meantime, let's get you in touch with how you can get in touch with us. ChrisSalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com, or you can go to at Chris Salcedo TX, at Chris Salcedo TX for instantaneous feedback. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, might as well let you know I'm fighting a little bit of a cold. Those of you who may hear it in my voice, a couple of cracks here and there, forgive me. The show must go on. Let's deal with what we touched on as we were talking about immigration on Friday with Ruben Navarrete Jr. Of course, this reprehensible ruling out of California. The man in question, who I will not name, he does not deserve a name. He is a multiple-time felon. He is a multiple-time deportee out of the United States of America. And he killed an innocent woman who was walking with her parents on a San Francisco pier. Kate Steinle was walking with her father. She does deserve the name. She does deserve to be remembered. She was struck by a bullet fired by that guy. Whether it be accidental or whether it be on a gun that he found or whether he stole the gun, the facts are this. That illegal alien fired the weapon and killed her. She died in her father's arms. Her last words were, "Dad, help me." And that individual will not face justice, at least for the most serious of what I believe his crimes are. The jury was instructed not to consider that he was a multiple-time felon, which I don't know of how many American citizens can escape that, to have their record follow them into a courtroom for a current offense, as, if anything, to show a predisposition toward violating the law. But the multiple-time deportation status was also not allowed to be considered. And this individual had violated our sovereignty on several occasions. The NyQuil is kicking in, folks. Let's listen to one of the attorneys, Mr. Garcia, I believe is this guy's name, his reaction to what had taken place.
For those who might criticize this verdict, there are a number of people that have commented on this case in the last couple of years. The Attorney General of the United States, the President and Vice President of the United States. Let me just remind them that they are themselves under investigation by a special prosecutor in Washington, D.C. And they...
Yes, he's alluding to the special counsel investigation that is underway right now, trying to determine, we're told, the involvement of the Russians in our last election, and that Mr. Trump is somehow implicated, but he's not. You see, special counsel Bob Mueller is looking for a crime. This hack attorney or any other attorney in this country cannot tell us what Bob Mueller is investigating, what crime he's investigating, because he's not. Mr. Mueller is looking for a crime, which is what special counsels are not supposed to do, but that's where we are. And comparing the President of the United States to a multiple-time felon, a 7-time felon, and a 5-time deportee is pretty lowbrow.
They may themselves soon avail themselves of the presumption of innocence and beyond a reasonable doubt standard. And so I would ask them to reflect on that before they comment or disparage the result in this case.
The American people are rightly discouraged. Now, I want you guys to consider something. You and I could be driving a car and we look down at our cell phone and we hit somebody from behind and we kill somebody. You and I could, at the very least, be convicted of involuntary manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter, involuntary vehicular manslaughter. But that didn't happen to the illegal alien because the illegal alien out in California is treated with kid gloves, is treated as a cut above the American citizen. It's a terrible miscarriage of justice. What really got me was a co-counsel who had more to say about the illegal alien and his killing of Kate Steinle.
I do want to talk about the political ramifications of this case. From day one, this case was used as a means to foment hate, to foment division.
It is not hateful or divisive to want the rule of law to be adhered to. He's, of course, talking about Donald Trump, thinking it's not a good idea to have illegal immigration into the United States. I happen to believe that as well. And many Latinos in this country, and it's a terrible assumption by this extremist who calls himself a lawyer, to assume that we as Latinos back lawlessness. It's not true, and it's an insult to the vast majority of law-abiding Latinos in the United States of America.
To foment a program of mass deportation. It was used to catapult a presidency along that philosophy of hate of others. And
again, this left-wing extremist who calls himself a lawyer likes to equate the rule of law with hate. Well, I cannot disagree more. And since we're making baseless claims like that, allow me to make another. That leftist lawyer is an anti-American freak. There, we can all do that, right? If I am going to be called a hateful person for wanting the rule of law to be enforced, then this leftist lawyer out there in California, we can brand him an anti-American freak because he wants to undermine our Constitution and undermine the rule of law.
I believe today is a vindication for the rights of immigrants.
Wait a minute. The rights of immigrants. Really? There was no immigrant who was involved in this case. Now, there was an illegal alien who was involved in this case, but an immigrant denotes, ladies and gentlemen, somebody who came into this country with permission. Nobody in this case was in that category. As a matter of fact, it was an illegal alien who had killed an innocent American citizen.
That today we have to reflect, all of us, on how we talked about this case in the beginning and how this swarm of reflection and reaction on the base of what I believe to be the racial dynamics of this case.
I see. So this leftist lawyer assumes that this man, because he shot and killed a woman in cold blood, that everybody was upset about his race, that had this been a white person, nobody would have been upset, or a black person, nobody would have been upset, who shot this woman and had her die in her father's arms. What an insult to the country this leftist lawyer is. By the way, he also doesn't deserve a name.
Nothing about Mr. Garcia Zarate's ethnicity, nothing about his immigration status, nothing about the fact that he is born in Mexico had any relevance as to what happened on July 1st, 2015.
Well, 1 out of 3, I guess. Well, it's terrible. It's 33%. The lawyer is patently wrong. What is germane absolutely to the case is that this man is a citizen of another country. This man was in our nation without permission. Now, his ethnicity has nothing to do with it, as I just stated. His ethnicity had nothing to do with this case. The fact that he should not have been in the United States in the first place to pull the trigger, that was what was germane. One of the individuals on Fox News, David Wohl, I think summarized the feeling of a lot of Americans, whether they be black, white, or Latino, who saw this as a miscarriage of justice. Listen to what he says. And I'm going to let it play all the way through because I can't encapsulate this any better than he does. I think this put a proper exclamation point as to why this was such a dangerous ruling where illegal aliens are treated with privilege compared to American citizens.
The reality is this isn't about hate, it's about anger. This guy was deported 5 times and 5 times came back. Whether or not what he did with that firearm legally amounted to murder is irrelevant. The point is he came to the pier. He had a loaded weapon. He fired the loaded weapon and ricocheted off the cement and killed Kate Steinle. The point is he shouldn't have been here to begin with. To politicize it, to say that Americans hate him because he's of Mexican ancestry is absolute garbage. And in fact, this verdict, if there's a silver lining, will fuel the efforts to deal with these immigration issues, such as the wall, such as sanctuary cities. That city, San Francisco, rolls out the red carpet so people like that man can come into the city and victimize their citizens. It's disgusting. On a legal level, on a social level, on a political level, every level, it's outrageous. And San Francisco ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Not only San Francisco, but the entire state of California, who basically puts American citizens at risk by opening up the border and welcoming illegal alien felons. This man was a multiple-time felon, a 7-time felon, and California welcomes him with open arms. And then when he kills somebody, something you and I would be thrown in jail at the very least on involuntary manslaughter, he gets off because he gets to be treated better than we American citizens. We'll talk about this with Congressman Kevin Brady and get into your taxes, how much the government's taking out of your paycheck. Coming up, the Salcedo Show worldwide on the Vida television network. Stick with me. And welcome back, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show here on the Vida television network. Happy you've tuned in tonight. Last week on Friday, I had the opportunity to interview the chairman of the Powerful House Ways and Means Committee. His name is Kevin Brady. Kevin Brady has been working for a good many weeks on tax reform in the House. And when I interviewed him, the Senate hadn't done its work yet. And for those of you who don't know, the Senate did vote to pass their version of tax reform, a lesser bill, an inferior bill, if you will. But as the two bills go to conference, I believe it'll be a stronger one in the end. There are some aspects of both bills that I like, some issues of both bills that I dislike, but I like the House version more simply because it seems more friendly to you and me. The Senate bill goes with complexity, which focuses primarily on making sure Washington gets as much money of our money as it wants, and Washington doesn't have to do without. The House bill simplifies the tax code. The House bill makes the tax brackets more understandable, makes them so you can complete your tax returns on a postcard. So that is just one of the aspects of the House bill that I really, really like. You guys have been hearing about how these tax proposals are unpopular because they are weighted, you are told, toward a bunch of rich fat cats. Let's explore that. The current corporate tax rate is 35%. It is the highest in the industrialized world. That means our government penalizes our businesses right off the bat, makes us instantaneously uncompetitive with the rest of the world. Now, what does that have the net effect of doing? Here's the first little dirty secret that Democrats will not tell you and that Republicans have lost the ability to tell you, is that corporations do not pay taxes, folks. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but they don't pay taxes. What happens is that those corporations will roll into the cost of doing business those taxes, and they pass on those costs to who? You. People in the middle and lower income tax brackets, the people who can least afford it. So when the government is punishing corporations with exorbitant taxes that makes them uncompetitive with the rest of the world, they're not punishing the corporations. They're actually punishing you. And not only this, they can only up those taxes and those fees and those regulations to squeeze more money out of those corporations, which is ultimately our money, for so long. What happens when you, let me just, I'll pick a product, some widget of some kind, a widget made in Japan and a widget made in the United States. Cost of production is the same, let's just say, minus labor, because our labor here in the United States is much more expensive than in Japan. But let's just go ahead. The cost of production, the raw material is the same, $5 and $5. Well, here comes the American government. They're going to start raising taxes and raising taxes and raising taxes. And all of a sudden, a widget, same widget, made in Japan and made in the United States, the United States version costs $15. The Japanese version costs $10. Where is the American consumer going to go? Of course, they're going to go with the $10 version because that saves them money. Now, the company in the United States that is forced to charge $15 for their widget, they can't compete anymore. They've been driven out of the marketplace because not because their product was inferior, but because the cost of doing business in the United States is detrimental to that business. So the business has two choices. It can close its doors, fire all of its employees, all of you, or it can pack up and leave and go manufacture its widgets over where? Japan. Which is what happens when you get Democrats and progressives who make up the tax codes to punish corporations. You don't get this primer and you don't get this understanding, in particular in the government-run education system these days. But that's the net effect in how high corporate taxation works. You're not putting the screws to the corporations, ladies and gentlemen. Your government is actually putting the screws to you in employment and the cost of higher cost of products. So keep all of that in mind as I get into a conversation with Congressman Kevin Brady about the House tax plan and what he will do once the Senate plan gets in front of him in a conference. Here's how it went on Friday.
I believe today is a vindication for the rights of immigrants, that today we have to reflect, all of us, on how we talked about this case in the beginning.
The co-counsel out there in the Kate Steinle case saying that this entire case was about race, was about how we talk about immigrants. He used the term immigrants during his statement. And of course, this is not at all what this is about. This is about illegal immigration and how American citizens are victimized, ladies and gentlemen, by illegal aliens let into our country by the federal government. Let's talk about this and many other things. Boy, there's never a shortage of stuff on your plate, is it, Congressman? Congressman Kevin Brady, representing the 8th Congressional District in the great state of Texas, chairman of the Powerful Ways and Means Committee, and a key point man on the effort to rid the country of not only Obamacare, but to also reform our dilapidated tax system. Congressman, welcome back.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And you're right. In fact, I'm here with Judge Ted Poe. We're getting ready to step into a meeting on the Harvey disaster aid issue as well. Texas has done amazing things, but we're going to need some help to rebuild some of these bayous and try to prevent the next one.
No, you know what? And before I let that go, we have to remind the country that Houston is still recovering and is going to be recovering for months and years down the road.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I was at a shelter the other day. They're still helping some 24,000 families in some ways, and some who are just living on the second floor of their home because it isn't inhabitable in the bottom one. So we got a lot of work to do. But this is a bipartisan effort. In fact, we're meeting this morning with the Florida delegation because they've got huge disaster relief needs as well. So we're trying to combine our forces up here.
Okay, gotcha. Let me pivot to the big breaking news overnight, the verdict of Kate Steinle. I know that you are no fan of illegal immigration into the United States of America. Just give me first blush your reaction to what many are calling a travesty of justice out in California.
Well, it certainly is, and I think the frustration is while I've had 100%, I think, of my time focused on tax reform because it's gaining so much momentum right now up here. Yeah, how can you ignore this case? And I know the media and many stations and others are sort of making it out to be a vindication of immigration policy and exaggeration on the part of people who believe in a strong, secure border and nation. And so, yeah, you have a right to be hammer. We all do on this issue. And I will just tell you, to pivot, you ought to be just as outraged about, we got a country in Washington that still is defending this tax code like it's the best thing on earth. And it's, frankly, we're now the worst code on earth, and our families and our businesses are getting hurt by it.
Yeah, you know what? And if I can continue the analogy, just like the American people are not worthy of a nonsensical illegal immigration system that allows an illegal alien felon to pick up a weapon and kill a woman in cold blood on a pier in San Francisco, is equally nonsensical is the current tax code, which you have rightly pointed out that you have been doing a lot of good work on. Let me ask you about what you're hearing about the Senate side. John McCain came on board yesterday, which many believed was a huge hurdle, but we'll deal with the passage of the Senate version of this first, and then we'll drill into some details. What are you hearing? Will it pass?
So I think the answer is yes. I've been frankly really encouraged by the progress in the Senate, both with the Finance and the Budget Committee and going to the floor. Have they hit some speed bumps? Yes, they have. And last night was one of them after a Joint Committee on Taxation came out with the dynamic score that, frankly, was better than many people expected. Still, in the Senate, among Republicans, they're trying to work out some deficit mechanism, trigger, or whatever they call that, to work with a couple of senators. I think they worked through the night on that. They had planned to vote today, Chris, but that's more likely to happen tomorrow. But still, they're making serious progress on tax reform. And once they finish this weekend, we are going to move immediately to go to what they call a conference committee between the House and Senate to work out the final details. So this has got a momentum that most pundits thought we'd never have.
Right, and I want to get to that. Kevin Brady, by the way, folks, our guest right now, 8th District in the great state of Texas, chairman of the Powerful Ways and Means Committee. And that you led me right where I wanted to go into my next question because, all right, whether or not the Senate bill is going to pass, that's one question. Then what is the Senate bill all about? And I think this is fair to say, it's weaker than the bill that you put together. It doesn't save. It's very Washington-centered, saying, Bob Corkers and the like say it's up to the American people to fund every crazy bloated program that Washington comes up with. And they want to put in trigger mechanisms in this tax bill that says, well, if we don't raise the revenues that we think, then we're going to raise your taxes. But I don't hear Bob Corker and his left wing ilk among the Republicans saying, hey, if it does what Kevin Brady says it's going to do, which is cause a boatload of money to flow into the Treasury, that we should give money back to the American people. I don't hear Bob Corker saying any of that, sir.
Well, look, the Senate is the Senate. They're working through that progress. And you're right, there's an awful lot of opposition to a trigger that raises taxes. Yeah. There's more openness to trigger that says, okay, look, if this doesn't create all the revenue that is predicted because our economy is booming, but not as much as coming in, let's tackle the spending side
yes.
of Washington. So that hasn't been completely lost in this. And the other thing, Chris, thing to point out is that because we made the decision last spring to sit down and work with President Trump on one tax reform approach, that has made all the difference in the world because the House and Senate are both actually shooting toward the same target. We get at it, in some different ways, but the point is they're both pro-growth. We think we have a very strong House bill. But I will tell you this, too. We're Republicans. We try to improve these things at every step in the way. And so the morning after the House passed that bill, for the first time in 3 decades, we were right back at work, House members, on how we make the tax cuts even deeper, how do we bring more jobs back to America, all the things you'd want us to keep focused on.
Gotcha. Very quickly, there has been word that the Senate likes to run things and likes to tell the House what to do. I thought of you immediately when I heard this story, that the House will just rubber stamp whatever the Senate puts out so that John McCain doesn't get his bum hurt or the Bob Corker doesn't get his bum hurt. And I said, man, Kevin Brady puts in all these hours, all this work, his committee, did all this work, and he's going to be forced to rubber stamp the Senate. Is that going to happen? Can you assure your constituents, Congressman, that won't happen?
Yes, sir. The answer is no way. That is not going to happen. It's already been announced. We're coming back early on Monday as House Republicans to move to a conference committee to continue to make that bill better. And yes, you're right. The Senate often likes to just say, look, we'll take one vote and the House needs to comply, but that will not be the case.
Well, that's welcome news because as I have said from the very beginning, the House version of this tax bill is better than the Senate, and I'm hoping the improvements continue to come. Last thing,
I think they will. I think they will.
Last thing I wanted to talk to you about. The last time you and I spoke, I had asked you about this slush fund. One of your colleagues in the House, John Conyers, is under increasing pressure. Finally, after Nancy Pelosi calls him an icon, more has come out that more accusers have come out, and we're learning that these congressmen like Raul Grijalva, this loudmouth leftist Latino from Arizona, Conyers, and others are using taxpayers' money to pay off in hush money their accusers. What have you been able to find out about how they're able to do this?
Yeah, so we don't have a complete picture yet, but here's what we know. This Office of Compliance was created when Republicans took control under Newt Gingrich and said Congress has to live under the same laws as everyone else. So this compliance office focuses on like safety violations, workplace violations, discrimination suits, things like that. So apparently a lot of it has dealt with anthrax and asbestos and disability improvements in the Capitol. So all well and good. The question is how often and how much has been spent on sexual harassment cases. That's not known yet, but the committee chairman with oversight over that is digging into it, gave us an update yesterday because they don't have the numbers, but that's going to be made public. And then reforms in the whole process will be made public as well.
Well,
thing.
Congressman, we have a dollar figure. We have 17.6 that we know of, $17.6 million in payouts.
But I'm not sure that's, Chris, the more that chairman digs, it looks like a lot of those were safety violations like asbestos and disability type issues. We want to find out. So how much is being used? Here's the second element, though, with Representative Conyers, that your point is, it looks like that settlement was paid out of his office account, which is prohibited, expressly prohibited. So the second question is, how often is that happening? So our Republican chairman of the committee, Greg Harper, is really drilling deep. So I expect to get some answers soon.
Well, thanks. Folks, I asked Congressman Brady to bring us back that information, and thanks for keep on digging, Congressman. Next time we get you on, and stick to your guns. Don't let the Senate roll you guys. Like I said, I truly believe the House version is closer to the people. The Senate version is closer to the D.C. establishment that thinks that they're in control, not we the people. Congressman Kevin Brady, everybody, 8th District in the great state of Texas. Sir, thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Okay, that's going to do it for the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide for this evening. Jump onto social media, if you will, at Chris Salcedo TX. That is Twitter for instantaneous feedback if you have any questions, you want to talk about taxes, or you can do it the old-fashioned way by dropping me an email at chrissalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com. You can also leave a voicemail there. There's a number there on the contacts page where if you feel strongly about anything that we've talked about, you can actually leave a voicemail. Just keep in mind, we may use them here on the program. See you tomorrow night, right back here on the Vida Television Network for the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide.